Welcome to the Real About Real Estate podcast with Michelle Hayward. Get the latest information meant for buyers and sellers straight from real people in the industry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for today's podcast, where we're talking about new home construction. More specifically, building dreams and exploring the world of new construction. I'm quite often asked about new construction, and so it just made sense to have that as a topic today. And what I find when I'm talking to people is I'm a little surprised by the number of buyers who are not aware of all the different things that goes into new home construction. And I get it. I do. You get so excited about the possibility of building that you forget about some of the other things, or you just may not even know about some of the other things. So while there's a lot to talk about, as there is with every topic in real estate, we're going to just hit the highlights, the main points here today, takeaways that will be useful tips for you. So, first, one of the questions that I'm asked is, do I need a realtor for a new construction? Like, what's the point of having a realtor? It's a new build. And the answer, quite honestly, is no, you don't. But should you have a realtor when it comes to new construction? And the answer is an absolute yes. And here's why. There's so many different moving parts to it that you need to better understand. And who better to help you navigate through all of that than an experienced realtor? So, what you may not know is that when you go into that new build, the first person you see is that sales agent who greets you with a smile, sits you down, asks you how they can help you, fascinate you beyond your already fascination of all the different floor plans, elevations, and the fact that it's a new build is something new and shiny. And of course, they never ask, do you have a realtor? Because that's not their place to ask you. They're waiting on you to tell them. And so when you walk through that door without a realtor, you don't have representation. So that sales agent, that mortgage lender, those contractors, everyone represents the builder. So you don't have a voice. You have no one there to represent you and help you better understand the contracts, because the contracts, whether you know it or not, are the builder's contracts. They're not the state contracts that are written up by the legal team. So realtors have very little say, if any, when it comes to the builder's contracts. And those contracts are written to protect the builder. They are the one taking on the most risk. And ironically, I've heard it said from even a past client, in looking at the contracts, and I make sure that everyone reads through them, thoroughly, anyone that I work with, and that's for any contract. But when you're looking at those contracts, there's so much lingo, so much, of the information is boilerplate, it's standard. But again, it's contractually designed to protect the one who has the most risk, in this case, the builder. So if you, as the buyer, don't have representation from an experienced realtor to tell you and to walk you through things that you want to pay attention to in that contract, you could be signing away things that you have no idea about until after the fact when it's too late. So, kind of going back to the mortgage lender who represents the builder. So, yes, they have, different incentives that they can offer you if you use their mortgage lender rather than someone who's an outside lender. So, for the mortgage lender that's in-house for the builder, you might get things like incentives, incentives for upgrades or even money towards closing costs. And all of those things are absolutely great, especially in today's market where everybody can use a little extra help. And why not? Why would you not take advantage of that? I get it. But the other side to that is again, when you're using their team of people, they're representing the builder. They're not representing you. And so to have an experienced realtor come in the door with you is so important to help you better understand all of those things and ask the questions that need to be asked. And even in some cases, help you negotiate. But let me also talk about that just for a second here. When I say negotiate, you're not negotiating that sales price, it's a new build. So there is really no moving of the needle when it comes to that. So to be clear, on a new build, as the buyer, you cannot. I mean, you can ask, always ask. It doesn't hurt to ask, but well, I won't say you'll be surprised because you probably won't be, especially if you watch this podcast, because I'm sharing with you that it's very seldom, if ever, a builder is going to reduce the sales price on a new construction. It just doesn't really happen. So that's one thing to be aware of. But again, there's so many different nuances that the realtor helps you with and navigating through that. So I'll get into that part a little bit more. But one of the things that I want to make sure that I point out is if you walk in the door without a realtor, and quite often it's even noticed, if you notice it on the front door when you walk in the next time, it's right there. They tell you that if you do not walk in with a realtor on your first visit, then basically they are not obligated to have to pay the commission to the realtor. And that's what it comes down to. They're in business to not only sell you a home, but to make money. And if they don't have to pay out a commission to a realtor, then they're not going to do it. And that's one of the ways that they try to avoid that. Now, granted, this is not unfair practice in any way. They're in business to make money as any business owner. So that is just their policy. And as part of their policy, they put that on the door or someplace that you can see when you're first walking through the door that says if you're not walking through with a realtor on the first visit, then they are not responsible for paying the realtor's commission. So now that does not mean that you cannot, you know, do something that's an alternative. So, for example, if you do have a realtor and you know you're going to be there at a new construction, then you want to at least have your realtor call ahead to that sales office just to give them a heads up to say, hey, my client is coming in today. His or her name is X, and I won't be able to make it, but just so you know, this is my client and I'm representing them. Or another alternative would be to hand the sales rep the agent's business card. And then that way that they know that you're working with a realtor. So there are, again, alternatives, but more often than not, they want that realtor with you on the first visit. So just know that, there are workarounds if you don't have your realtor with you. The other thing that I wanted to point out, kind of going back to that contract that we talked about, the builder's contract. There's so many different moving parts, as I stated before. You want to make sure you read that contract thoroughly. And a realtor has expertise in that field to be able to point things out. Now, granted, they can't change the document in any way, but they can ask the right questions and get some clarification for you. There might be some other things that they can negotiate. So, like on those upgrades, for example, they might be able to because they know the lingo, of course, and especially if they've developed a relationship with that sales rep, you'd be surprised at things that can be negotiated on your behalf. And everybody wants to make the new resident, the new homeowner, happy. So, we do try to work together, but realtors, we really do. We fight on our clients' behalf to try to make sure that you're getting the best deal that you can possibly get. So, one of the other things that I wanted to mention, going back to the commission, and I touched on that a little bit. So, the builder, if you're not walking in the door with an agent, again, they're not obligated to have to pay the agent's commission. But let's say you decide that you want to work with a realtor after the fact. You've walked into this new construction, met with a sales rep. You don't have a realtor. You've stated that you don't have a realtor if the conversation comes up. But just say you don't mention that you have one at all. But then you decide after the fact that, you know what, this is a little bit more than what I thought it was going to be. I really do or should have a realtor to represent me. And you decide to go get a realtor and you bring that realtor back with you. Well, just know again, that builder, that sales rep who represents the builder, they are more than likely not going to cover the commission for that realtor. That means you, as the buyer, are completely responsible for the full commission to that realtor. And even in the case where, let's say, you do go in the first visit and you have a realtor, and that realtor is even with you, the builder, in even that case, only pays a portion of the commission. And it's typically, it's typically a reasonable amount, but it doesn't cover the full commission, which means that the buyer is still responsible for the difference of that commission. And that's something that can be worked out between you and your agent. Because again, your agent is there to represent you. Everything in this business in real estate, quite honestly, is negotiable. But there are some things that have to be discussed and would, of course, have to be considered fair and reasonable between all parties. So now the other thing that I wanted to mention to you is talking about the sales price a little bit. When I said that you can't negotiate the sales price with a new construction, that's very true. You cannot negotiate the sales price. Like I said, you can ask. You never know. The answer could be, they could work something out or give other incentives like on the upgrades that we talked about. But with the sales price, you are more often than not, whatever that list price is on that property, and this is the base price, that is what you are going to pay. And you know what? One other thing I want to point out, kind of going back to that base price, that is what the builder pays the commission on to the agent, not the full sales price. So let me be clear about that. So there's a difference between the base price and the sales price when it comes to new construction. So in the base price, that is what the commission is based off of that the agent will receive from the builder. That is before any upgrades. The sales price includes upgrades. So you have the purchase price of the property plus the upgrades is what the commission is based off of. But more often than not, the builder is going to pay the commission based on the base price. So I know, again, there's a lot of information that goes into new construction. And this podcast was personal to me because I've had a home built. I know what it's like to get so excited and just be in awe of all the different things that you can think about doing, putting, your personal touches and everything on your new home, your newly built home. And it's so exciting. But just understand that there's a lot that goes into it. And it sounds like it might be a little bit more, straightforward or, easier process than maybe buying an existing build. And, they each have their own, nuances, so to speak. But in the new construction, you have still a lot of paperwork. You still have a lot of things you have to understand. And the process, Yeah, it can be a lot too, you know. So just having a realtor who is experienced, who knows the questions to ask, and even if they don't always know the questions to ask, just having somebody to be able to be there with you throughout the process, it matters so much. So you're not in it by yourself. And again, the realtor is there to be the glue. I mean, that's really the best way to think about it. The realtor is there to be the glue, and that's true of any transaction, no matter what the transaction is. But in a new construction, from the very beginning throughout the entire process, that realtor is there to make sure that all parties stay abreast of what's going on, that the process is moving forward and moving forward smoothly, making sure that there, any kinks or anything that may come up, that those things are being addressed well before closing. And so with all of that, which again I know is a lot, I do hope that you, when you are thinking about having a home built, or you know of anybody who is, that you will reach out to an experienced lender, or not lender. Well, you want an experienced lender too, but an experienced realtor who can help you throughout the whole process. So, with that, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the Real About Real Estate podcast with Michelle Hayward. Like, follow, and subscribe to continue to get the real about real estate.